forward/today SOR.
Now, this week, following months of lobbying by Irish officials in Brussels, the government secured a reduction in its EU climate targets for 2030. And one aspect of the government's plan to combat emissions is forestry management, planting more trees to create more carbon sinks. But in one county, the plan is not without controversy. It's been claimed that the forestry is replacing families and communities in Leitrim. Some farmers say that they are being priced out of the market because of increased competition for land, and the IFA has gone as far as claiming that the forestry drive in Leitrim is going to wipe out rural communities. Well, I'm joined now by James Gallagher, chairman of Leitrim IFA, Mossy Ryan, timber marketing of Greenbelt, and the Minister for State at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Andrew Doyle. You're all very welcome. Mossy's here in studio with me, the other two guys on the phone. James, to you first. What is the IFA's problem with planting forests in Leitrim?
Good morning, Damien. The problem with forestry in Leitrim is that it's an indiscriminate planting regime where there is no planning involved. Foreign investors, pension funds, are purchasing land and competing with local farmers for that land. They have the money to buy it, and they're increasing the price. Now, they have an advantage on this, is that the money derived from forestry, whether it be the premium or the clear felon, is tax-free.
So you have no problem with planting forests as long as it's a farmer that's doing it?
If a farmer wants to plant his own land, we have no problem with that. That's not causing us a problem. It's where some outsiders come in, investors, and they're pushing the price of the land up, and the local farmer can't purchase it. And I'll give you an example of how this is working. Of one particular farmer who wanted to buy a piece of land right beside him that went for sale. He went to the bank to get a loan for it. He just wanted 50% loan. He had the rest of the money. And he was turned down. He was refused by the bank. But the bank manager told him before he left that if he was purchasing that land for forestry, he would give him 100% loan.
Now, this just sounds, James, like sour grapes on behalf of the farmers. As you said, if it was farmers, you'd have no problem if they planted 50% of Leitrim as long as it's farmers that are doing it. But when you have investment funds, pension funds, or indeed sons of farmers that are living abroad that inherit the land and want the land planted because they're living away from it, that's when you have a problem with it.
We have a problem with that. And also, one of the problems is that when people are living abroad and we're sending tax-free premiums to them each year, and there's no money being spent in the local economy. Now, the other argument is that this is creating jobs. Now, it takes 1,000 acres of forestry to create one job. And the Minister who's joining you now, I have said this to him when we met him a week ago in Leitrim. He came down, he was going to announce 30 new jobs in Masonite in Carrick-on-Shannon, and it's good to hear of jobs being created in Leitrim. But the reality factor is that it takes 1,000 acres of land to create one job. That means you're displacing 300 families to create 30.
Okay.
So that's not good economic.
Okay, and Leitrim, you say, is a target here. Is it because the land is cheaper up there? Because you have a huge timber company like Masonite in the region as well? Are they combining to attract these investors?
The land is cheaper in Leitrim because of the quality type of land, and that's making it more attractive for the investors. Okay.
Well, Mossy Ryan of Greenbelt is here. Mossy, you're in the forestry, advising farmers and helping anybody indeed that wants to plant land. Do you agree with what James is saying there, that you have these big vultures, if you want of a better word, coming in, pricing farmers out of it, and planting willy-nilly forests all across Leitrim?
I take what you say, David, and I take what James says as well. But what we actually do, and we have been doing, and I normally share the podium with the IFA on many, on all forestry issues, and I'm sure James, as his predecessors, I would have dealt with mainly. But what we do actually is we normally plant land for farmers. That's really what our core business is. Now, if a person doesn't have land, we locate land for him. So we buy the land from the farmer. That's probably what James is talking about. Now,
but just define what you mean there. The problem, it seems, among locals and among farmers there in County Leitrim is they are being priced out of the market by pension funds and foreign investors who have loads of money, loads of cash, and they want to invest it in something that's a fairly solid investment over a long period of time.
Sure, it's a solid investment. And Damien, I will just deal with the foreign investors and foreign pension funds that James and other people seem to be talking about. There is no foreign, the average planted area.
Well, let's call them non-farmers.
Non-farmers.
Regardless of whether they're foreign or not, they're foreign to Leitrim. They're foreign to farmers in Leitrim.
Yeah, well, the foreign investor is, let's say, the average size investment in forestry, the average size planted area by the Forest Service over the last 10 years is 8 hectares. Now, there won't be a big clamour of people coming for 8 hectare unit because we have to go through all the archaeological, the environmental things, the Birds Directive, Habits Directive, Water Framework Directive, all those sort of things, just for 8 hectares.
Okay. So I'll just bring in the Minister at this stage. Minister Andrew Doyle at the Department of Agriculture, good morning to you.
Morning, Damien.
Do you accept the arguments being made by farmers and locals here?
Well, I went up to meet the local people up in Drumshambo last week, and I did visit Masonhouse, and I also visited a plantation in another part of the county. Just a couple of points. If you take the national estate of forestry is about 1.8 million acres. There are 12,000 jobs.
Let's forget about the jobs and all that. Just to go back.
That equates to 154 acres per job.
Right.
Okay?
People are getting lost now at hectares, acres, jobs, thousands, trees and the whole lot. Just back to the point. The kernel point, the argument here in Leitrim is that farmers are being priced out of the market by investors. Is the government encouraging these people to come in? Because we have targets now that we must meet, and in relation to climate change, and part of that, of course, will be to have more forest cover around the country. So are you encouraging these big investors to come in and plant land?
Okay, well, 68 sites last year approved in Leitrim. 58 were farmers, 10 were non-farmers. The average area was 7.5 hectares, which is about 17 acres. That's not attractive to large multinationals or pension funds, etc. There is a question, and I was asked, which I can't answer, how many of those people actually live or reside or in but these are farmers. But
is there any regulation? We know there's regulation when it comes to building houses or building anything. When it comes to planting forestry, is there any sort of regulation in regards to quotas in an area? Could the half of Leitrim or the half of Cavan or the half of Clare be planted without any problem? Is there any regulation or rule there with regards to how much land can be planted in a specific area?
There's a whole series of both EU and national legislation that governs this. Including the publication of all sites on the web, and when the new Forest Act, which I've given a commitment to fully enacting, means that public notices on all sites will actually be in place, hopefully before the end of the year or the beginning of this planting season, if possible. But there are, for instance, water quality tests, in asset-sensitive areas. There's codes of best practice, setback areas. But there is an issue with people being aware of the fact that there's a plantation going to take place.
Yeah, I'll just bring James back in on that. James, is this another problem that people don't know that a field beside them is going to be planted until they see the diggers going in?
Exactly, Damien. And in fact, the Minister was favourable to us in his address to us that day in Drumshambo. We're looking for site notices to be placed on all intended afforestation areas, plus in the local papers. But the site notice is very important, and we would like it treated the same as planning for a house. So that site notice would be there for several weeks, so that everybody in the local area would know that there's forestry taking place, and would give them an opportunity to purchase the land or whatever. But just to go back on something the Minister said there are rules and regulations regarding planning regarding forestry, but they're not being adhered to. And I can give you an example. If you were in the town of Drumkeirton, there's an area of 65 acres planted right in close to the town, and none of those rules were followed. It was the objection from the local people and the county councillors that managed to bring it under control. There was a listed building on that site, and it was going to be planted right up within 5 metres, where it should have been back over 20. Forestry has been planted in round houses and closer to main roads than it should be, and no one seems to be policing this. So there's a problem here that's really angering the community.
Okay, well, I bring Mossy in on that. Mossy, that's something I'd say you and your business, you wouldn't like to see, where proper site notices were given, because you would have no plantations, because you're going to have people that will object.
You can. Well, they're entitled to object, Damien, but everything goes to the county development, to the county council to see if it fits into the county development plan. So there can't be too much forestry in any given parish. But
what's too much?
Well, that depends on what county you're in or what section, what part of County Leitrim you're in, because the size of the mountains there and they're probably pure.
But is it true that a farmer or an investor can start planting without telling anybody in the local area?
It is not true at all, because mainly if somebody buys the land, it's normally advertised for sale for a long time by an auctioneer, so everybody knows it's for sale. So it's most unlikely.
But once the farmer buys it, he can graze cattle on it, or he can do what he wants with it.
If anybody owns land, surely they're entitled to do with it what they will.
Yeah, but that's the point. Are local people then in dwellings not being told, having no idea that the farmer across the road is going to build a forest which is going to overshadow them in 10 or 15 years' time?
Okay, there's a regulation now that's in for the last number of years that you have to be 60 metres away from a residence. So that's 60 metres is quite a bit, at all sides of that residence. So what more can you do?
Okay. Minister, why is Leitrim being targeted here? Is there, I suppose, an incentivisation because of the cheap land, and is this something that you're delighted with quietly? Because, as I said, we're way below the EU average when it comes to forest cover. So the more trees that are planted, the better. And if land is cheap in Leitrim and people are willing to go up there and plant the land, that's something that helps you meet climate change targets, for example.
But Leitrim, I come from Wicklow, Damien, as you know.
Yeah.
There's a higher percentage and a higher area of the land in Wicklow covered. Clare has the highest area. It's the 16.4% of, which is 52,000 hectares. We've 35. Leitrim is 26.5. We've almost 36. In last year, yes, 513 or 12 hectares was the highest in the country. Was in Leitrim. In 2013, Roscommon. In 2014, Roscommon, Tipperary, second in both years.
Okay, so the point being that...
So the context here is, and I accept one point that James made, which is really relevant here, is the attitude of the banks. The idea that somebody would be declined a 50% loan to purchase land to farm it because the bank's seen the forestry as... It's a simple business plan. There's a lack of understanding by banks of an investment plan for, say, a farmer who wants to plant a portion of his own land. And Mossy's right. I mean, if people buy land, they're entitled to do it as long as it's compliant with all the regulations. And I think it is important that we get the site notices issue sorted very quickly, and the notice that people are aware. But I think it is important that the banks understand that people can actually improve the earning business and earning potential of a particular holding by planting a portion of it, and that farmers would be allowed to buy land with that in mind, or to plant some of their existing land and add to the whole farm value. Okay, and I think that's something that is missed here.
Okay, just
it's too simple for the banks just to say, oh well, we know what's going in forestry. We don't have to do too complicated of an assessment of it, and we're going to grant it for that in favour of somebody else who only wanted 50%, and that I was told about that when I was up there.
All right, Mossy, just one final point to you in relation to forestry. A lot of people are very annoyed at the fact that what's masquerading as forestry and good for the environment is this monocrop plantation. We've a few texts in about it. You know, please do not call Silka spruce plantation forestry. Is that what's happening all over the country?
Well, that's where the money is. That's the commercial species, and you don't get a grant for planting trees if they're not commercial. So the majority of the plantation will be Sitka spruce, because that's what the profitable species.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Mossy Ryan, Minister Andrew Doyle and James Gallagher, thank you all indeed for joining us.
Today with Sean O'Rourke on RTE Radio 1.